Great. Good evening, everyone. Today is May 19th, 2026. It is 5:30 p.m. and we will call this ACWD Special Board of Directors meeting to order. We'll start with item number 1. Roll call, please.
Directors Weed,
Here.
Huang,
Here.
Gunther,
Here.
Sethy,
Here.
and Akbari.
Here. Vice President Weed, will you lead us in salute to the flag?
Join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll now turn it to the General Manager for the housekeeping tonight.
Great. Thank you, President Akbari, and good afternoon/evening, everybody. On behalf of the ACWD Board of Directors, I'd like to welcome the public's participation in this special meeting of the ACWD Board. My name is Ed Stevenson, and I serve as the district's General Manager. Members of the public may participate in this board meeting in person or remotely by either using the Zoom application or by telephone. Any member of the public participating in person may approach the speaker's podium at the appropriate time. For those participating remotely, note that the meeting agenda and presentation materials are available on the district's website at acwd.org. You may reference the instructions at the top of the agenda for how to participate using the controls in the Zoom app or your dial pad if participating by telephone audio. This hybrid board meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public for future viewing. Again, thank you all for attending. And President Akbari, that completes my housekeeping remarks.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to item number 3, public comments on matters on this notice of special meeting. Members of the public may address the board on any issues that are listed on the agenda. I'll open it up for comments. I don't believe we have any members of the public in person. Doesn't look like we have any members of the public online. We can always open up for public comments as we go through this meeting and if anybody does. So we will move on to item 4.1, our fiscal year 2024-2025 financial benchmarking report, and I'll turn it to our general manager to kick us off.
Great. Thank you, President Akbari and members of the board. And just broadly on the overall budget workshop this evening, I just want to kind of highlight a couple of things. That first of all, as the board knows, that this particular part of our overall budget cycle, we're in the mid-cycle sort of review session period right now. And so really the key objective for this budget is to really make adjustments for next fiscal year's previously adopted budget based upon actual expenditures during the current fiscal year and refined estimates for expenditures over the next fiscal year. This budget does come at a unique time on the heels of our strategic planning work and also our water resources master planning work. And I would say for the strategic planning work, no significant budget adjustments were needed for the upcoming budget. For the water resources master planning work, the board knows that we have some planned now capital improvements for the upcoming years that will need to be fully reflected in the next CIP cycle. I will say staff did a nice job of doing our best to really kind of update the financial planning model with our initial stab at implementing those projects over the next number of years. But those projects, new projects associated with the water resources master plan, won't show up in the CIP part that you see tonight. There's already a fair amount of projects in there that are already consistent with the water resources master plan that, of course, are in the CIP. So there's a lot in this presentation. Just a reminder, much of the first several slides is there's a lot of detail in there about accomplishments over the last fiscal year and plus, and there are a lot of goals and objectives in there too. Staff doesn't plan on going through all of that in great detail, but certainly wanted to make sure it was included in the record, and we have certainly we're ready to respond to any questions or discuss any of those items that are of interest. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it right over to our Interim Director of Finance, Calvin Cho, to get us started.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson.
This item is the annual benchmark report for fiscal year 24-25. The purpose is to compare ACWD's performance against similar Bay Area water providers using key operational, financial, and rate-related metrics. As in prior years, the benchmark data is taken from each agency's audited financial report called ACFR. No surveys were distributed. We are primarily comparing ACWD against Contra Costa Water District, Dublin San Ramon, East Bay Mud, Marine Municipal Water District, SFPUC, and San Jose Water Company. For some metrics, San Jose Water Company is limited because its publicly available annual report no longer provides the same level of detail as prior years. The metrics are grouped into three areas: operational efficiency, financial capacity, and rate impact. And for the charts, the horizontal line represents median. I would not recommend focusing too heavily on any one specific agency because each provider has a unique operational circumstances. This is not necessarily an apple to orange comparison, but perhaps more like comparing a Fuji apple to a Washington apple. They are all water providers, but each district has different governance structure, infrastructure system, source water reliability, groundwater management responsibility, capital program, wholesale versus retail component, and financial strategies. Because of that, staff believes the median is more useful overall parameter for evaluating ACWD's performance. Now going to the slide, cost of water services. The formula we use for this is total cash payment during the fiscal year divided by the total water production in 100 cubic feet. On cost of water services, ACWD decreased from 11.23 per 100 cubic feet last year to 9.17 per 100 cubic feet this year, moving from slightly above the median to slightly below the median. Connections per employees. The formula we use for this is total active connections divided by total employees, FTEs. For connections per employee, ACWD continues to compare favorably and remains above the median. This reflects our relatively lean staffing level compared to the number of connections we serve. Looking at the operating revenue and employees, the formula we use for this is operating revenue divided by total employees. For operating revenue per employee, ACWD is slightly below the median. This is not unexpected because more comparator agencies have large institutional, wholesale, or broader service components that can increase revenue per employee. Operating cost per connection, this is operating expenses divided by total active connections. For operating cost per connection, ACWD is slightly below the median, which indicates that our operating cost structure remains reasonable compared to the benchmark group. Debt coverage ratio, this is net revenue available for debt service divided by annual debt service. Debt coverage continues to be a strong area for ACWD. Our debt coverage ratio increased from 4.74 to 5.79. We remain well above the median and continue to show strong financial capacity. Unfunded pension and OPEB liability divided by annual payroll. For unfunded pension and OPEB liabilities, it is divided by payroll, and ACWD improved from 2.14 to 1.68. This reflects the district's continued effort to pay down these liabilities at an accelerated pace. The median also decreased from 1.92 to 1.64, and ACWD remains close to the median. The monthly residential water bill based on 800 cubic feet of water. For the monthly bill, ACWD's typical residential bill at 8 HCF is $74.51, which is now $7.77 below the median. Last year, we were $5.01 below the median, so our position improved. And ACWD is also now slightly below the next lowest bill in this benchmark group, which is Agency C. So we're the lowest. For the rate increase, this is the current year water rate minus the prior year water rate divided by prior year water rates. And for the fiscal year 24-25 rate increase, as we all know, ACWD's 4.0 increase was 3.35% points below the median. And two agencies, you could see that they have a double-digit increase, which helps explain why the gap between the ACWD's bill and the median bill widened. And you see that whole big gap from ACWD to the median line. Looking at the total liabilities and operating revenue, for total liabilities divided by operating revenue, ACWD continues to compare favorably. This metric is helpful because it captures long-term debt, pension, and OPEB obligation relative to the agency's operating revenue. And on slide 16 and 17, it just summarizes the year-over-year changes and variance from the prior benchmark report and reinforce the trend we just discussed. Overall, ACWD is better than the median on most benchmark metrics. Where we are not better than the median, we are still very close. ACWD continues to show strong financial capacity, reasonable operating costs, and favorable customer bill comparisons. Looking ahead, future capital needs, including major projects in the Water Resource Master Plan, may affect our rate and debt-related benchmarks, but at the same time, our continued progress on pension and OPEB funding should help improve those related metrics over time. That concludes the benchmark report, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the
me?
board?
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation, the finance meeting for this.
No questions from the board. Let me just confirm. Do you have any members?
So now officially we're moving on to item 4.2, and this is the showstopper this evening. This is a review of the mid-cycle updates to fiscal year 2025-26 and fiscal year 2026-27 budget. Again, I'll turn it over to our interim director of finance, Mr. Cho.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. So this is our fiscal year 26-27 mid-year's budget workshop, and tonight's presentation is intended to provide an overview of the district's updated operating budget, capital improvement program, and long-term financial planning outlook. And before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the staff presenting tonight. Joining me are Guru Mawok, Director of Engineering and Technology, Chris Delp, Project Engineering Manager, Martin Coran, Financial Analysis Supervisor, and Cassandra Kao, Acting Senior Financial Analysis. So we will generally follow the same format as prior years. The presentation begins with a high-level overview of the district, our mission, strategic priorities, accomplishments, and core focus areas. And we'll then move into the budget assumptions, operating and capital budget updates, and conclude with the updated financial planning model and next steps. And similar to prior years, staff's goal tonight is to work through the entire presentation and receive board feedback and direction. If we are able to get through the full workshop tonight and there are no major changes requested by the board, staff is hoping the additional backup budget workshop meetings will not be necessary. So first portion of the presentation through slide 12 is intended to provide context on the district's overall mission, service areas, operational priorities, and financial philosophy. And from slide 13 through 25, as Mr. Stevenson mentioned, it summarized the major accomplishments and goals by department. And rather than reading each bullet point, staff will be available to respond to any board questions or provide additional detail as needed. These slides are also intended to document the substantial amount of work occurring across the district related to infrastructure reliability, water supply planning, cybersecurity, emergency preparedness, regulatory compliance, workforce development, and customer service. As highlighted throughout the presentation, staff continues to focus on balancing several important priorities simultaneously, maintaining reliable water supply, water quality, preserving long-term financial stability, investing in aging infrastructure, addressing increasing regulatory requirements, and maintaining reasonable rates for our customers. And this year's budget also continues the district's focus on long-term financial sustainability, including continued prudent investment in infrastructure replacement and seismic improvements, as well as advanced funding of pension and retiree health obligation with the goal of fully funding by 2032. And if there are no questions, I would now turn it to Mr. Coran.
I have one quick question.
On-
Pillar number 2.
For which department?
This is the first time I've heard of the East Bay Quadrant Agency. What is this all about?
So I just want to take a stab at that, or want me to do it, since we're both kind of involved.
Oh, that's the
This is the AQPI.
precipitation study that we want to have the, yeah, AQP.
So the AQPI program, oh, there we go. Yes, the Advanced Quantitative Precipitation Information System. So I think we've talked about this briefly in committee before. There's this system of different radars that will give us better information regarding rainfall, in real time, and localized information that will help us better operate our facilities in the long run and understand the dynamics of our watershed. And so part of this is reimbursing. These radars were installed under a grant from the Department of Water Resources, and this was all coordinated by Sonoma County Water Agency. And so now there's some remaining funds that need to be reimbursed that we are working toward having that finalized in the upcoming year. So that's the short version. Mr. Stevenson is well up to speed on this project too, so he may have more to add.
I was on a field trip with Santa Clara Valley Water District up to Penitentiary Creek Treatment Plant. And is that the thing that we were looking at that was on top of the hill that had just been installed?
So we have a similar one in the East Bay, and it's up on Rocky Ridge, and the East Bay partners have been collaborating on that one. So it's very similar to the one at Penitentiary, I believe.
That's right. Yeah, and what this is about is the next steps in that overall program. And this is something the board saw like a long time ago. So it doesn't surprise me that it's not ringing bells, but current efforts are underway to sort of wrap up the original installation and resolve the installation costs and get things buttoned up. And then there's another phase that we need to work on, having to do with the long-term maintenance and operation, and then the data manipulation and sharing and so forth. So it's part of a continuing program. The East Bay Quadrant is the ACWD is leading the East Bay Quadrant of the 4 Bay Area quadrants when it comes to wrapping up the current installation with the costs and so forth. So
Are we getting money back, or we have to put in more money?
we're putting in a little bit more money, just like the other partners in the East Bay Quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
That's the plan, and nothing's been settled yet, but that's what's underway.
Yeah, I was very excited when I saw the installation of that unit going in, and all the imaging that was coming across the computer screens and everything. At some point, it'd be nice to get an update on what we're learning from this, how it differentiates from prior radar systems, because this is at a different frequency.
Great. Sounds like a good future committee topic.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a question on page 22, the very first bullet. Led the district participation in state administrated low-income household water assistance program.
Mm-hmm.
Is the state providing any funding with that program?
That they did, and this applies to the prior fiscal year, and so we were wrapping up implementation of the LEWAT program at that time. So that was one of the accomplishments by the finance
Was there
group.
apparently it went by me. I didn't realize that there was funding, and how significant was it?
Oh yeah, it was a big thing, but it was coming out of COVID. Right?
That was the COVID
Yeah,
funding program.
yes.
That's what we're talking about.
Right, yeah, and that's over now.
Thank you.
Okay,
Like COVID was a while back.
it was indeed. All right, Mr. Coran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Good evening to the board, general manager, staff, and the public. My name is Martin Coran. I will be presenting the budget process, assumptions, and revenues section. And then staff, as you saw the list of presenters, will be tag teaming throughout the presentation this evening. So first up, as you are well familiar with this, as we like to call this the circle of life, how we illustrate the district's two-year budget cycle. We are currently in the mid-cycle budget process. So it's that orange, the orange circle there at roughly 8 o'clock. The Finance and Administration Committee reviewed the draft mid-cycle budget at the April 21st meeting, and any feedback received from the committee is already incorporated in the proposed amended budget. We are now in May, and the board is here tonight reviewing the proposed mid-cycle budget with the approved approval scheduled for June next month. So the proposed budget includes the following assumptions and planned activities. Projected build demands are updated and aligned with water resources projections, with the new normal water demand at 33.85 million gallons per day, compared to the previous estimate, which was slightly higher at 33.94 million gallons per day. The state water project allocation for the calendar year was just increased from 30% from Table A to 45% effective May 14th. I just saw the memo this morning. So this is brand new information for us. And the budget assumes a 5% rate increase for fiscal year 27 and 28. This was as presented over the last year with our financial planning model. And really important points, San Francisco Public Utility Commission increases their rate 7.4% in each of the next 2 years effective July 1. And with the budget, the labor and benefit cost assumptions are consistent with negotiated agreements for all groups. And the last point there, new people hired on or after January 2019 are enrolled in the Retiree Health Savings Plan. And currently there are 119 active employees in the plan, which is about 49% of our budgeted positions. The mid-cycle budget includes costs for investments in infrastructure replacement and seismic improvements, such as the main renewal program, reservoir and pump station improvements, IT and operational technology and security. And it also includes costs for initiatives to ensure water supply reliability, including the Delta Conveyance Project. And there are other projects that were already identified as components of the Water Resources Master Plan. Those are still there, but any of the new projects that were identified during the Water Resources Master Plan are not included in this yet. And then finally, contributions for pension and OPEB are maintained at a more aggressive level to get to full funding by June 2032 as per board direction.
So this slide is per the adopted policy that was approved last Thursday. And going forward, every budget workshop, you'll see this slide. And if you look closer, you'll see that for the pension, we're 81.9% funded, and our goal was 79.1%. So we're actually above 2.8%, and that's still within the 5% for pension. So we're not making any changes. Going to the OPEB on the next slide, you'll see that we're 72.19%, and our goal was 72.26%. So we're actually negative 0.01% below, and that's within 10% for the OPEB. So we're not making any changes, and we'll continue to budget as we have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cho. So this next slide illustrates the district's financial planning process, which includes the Water Resources Master Plan, the 25-year CIP, biennial budget, financial planning model, and the rate setting process. And the public is invited and encouraged to participate in the process and provide input. And now we jump into the numbers. This is what we in finance live for. So all finance slides have the same format showing the two prior years, fiscal year 24 and 25 actuals, the adopted budget for fiscal year 26, along with fiscal year 26 estimated actuals for the remainder of this year, and the adopted budget fiscal year 27 and the proposed amended budget for fiscal 27. So this summary is of general fund revenues, expenses, and ending cash balances. Ms. Cow and Mr. Awoke and Mr. Delp will review the mid-cycle budget and CIP in more detail later in the presentation. Right now, the beginning balance for the current fiscal year 26 is $105.8 million, which is $700,000 lower compared to budget. The ending balance in the general fund is projected to increase by $12.5 million from 88.1 at the end of fiscal 26, the adopted budget, to $100.6 million at the end of this fiscal year. In the fiscal 27 amended budget, ending balance is projected to be $101.5 million, or $14 million more than the adopted budget. We'll get into the why as we move through the presentation. There's a capital financing proceeds line, continues to include $20 million in fiscal year 27 in the form of interim financing. And again, this is a possible approach to funding the capital program and managing cash flow needs. And the interim financing could be done by issuing commercial paper or obtaining a line of credit. This next chart compares monthly total water consumption over the last several years. And to keep the chart manageable, we show the current fiscal year 26 is the red dashed line. The prior 3 years, fiscal years 23, 24, and 25. The peak consumption year, fiscal year 21, was during COVID. That is the orange line. And the last major drought year, fiscal year 2016, is the gray line. And as you can see, the current year, fiscal 26, the red dashed line has been trending about 1.5% lower all year. There was a big uptick in April. But consumption through April totals 27.86 million gallons per day. Last year at this time, we were at 28.29 million gallons per day. So that's 1.5% lower compared to the prior year. And for comparison, the drought year, represented by the gray line, we were at 23.64 MGD through April. So that's 18% less. So that concludes this part of the presentation. I'd like to pause here, see if you have any questions. No questions online. Now we start seeing some pretty colored pictures as well. So this chart illustrates the district's revenue and cost structures. As you can see on the bar chart on the left, we have property tax, service charges, and consumption charges, or what we consider basic reliable consumption. They make up 91% of the district's revenues. These revenues are considered to be reliable. The bar chart on the right shows that 46% of the district's costs are fixed, including capital costs of 32%. This would mean that 80% of costs are considered reliable expenses, while 22% of the costs are variable, which are purchased water, power, and other utilities. This next slide shows total revenue. So overall, fiscal year 26 revenues are expected to come in about 1% above budget, mostly due to healthy facilities connection charges revenues, as well as PFAS settlement money. Water revenues are forecast to come in about 1% below budget, since the overall trend has been about 1.5% lower consumption than anticipated. So for the proposed amended budget, fiscal year 27, total revenues are expected to increase 11% in fiscal year 27. But as previously identified, the financial planning model assumes a 5% rate increase in fiscal year 27, along with a modest increase in new meters resulting from development. Next slide details two major components of water revenues that were summarized on the previous slide. So consumption charges make up 64% of total water revenues based on each unit of water used. And the service charge is 36% of total water revenues, which is the fixed charge based on the customer's meter size. And in this summary, it also includes other revenues like fire line service, backflow testing, and account establishment. So since the district cannot control the weather or customer behavior, we wanted to show a comparison of budgeted versus actual water revenues for the last 10 years. And budgeted revenue over the last 10 years totaled $1,144 million. Actual revenue over the last 10 years was $1,146 million. So actuals have been roughly within 1% of budget. And over 10 years, the estimates have been higher by a total of $9.9 million, which amounts to approximately $1 million per year or 1% of budget. So this is a 99% accuracy rate. This is the graphic version of the previous table that illustrates overall expected revenue changes over the budget period based on the most recent assumptions already discussed. It's a combination of rate changes approved by the board, rate assumptions built into the financial planning model, along with development activity and expected grants. And speaking of grants, between fiscal years 24 and 27, the district is expecting to receive $13.2 million, of which the major grants are $8.3 million from FEMA for hazard mitigation grants for the Alvarado Niles pipeline, $2 million from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation for AMI, and $2 million from Prop 1 for the brackish groundwater reclamation. So regarding the Alvarado Niles pipeline, to date, this fiscal year, we've spent approximately $5 million, and staff expects to pay out approximately $1.5 to $2 million per month on construction expenses moving forward. And that's already reflected in the budget and the financial planning model. So staff is currently working on the opportunities highlighted on the screen. Federal grants assisting with various mitigation grants for seismic retrofits and conservation, resilience, and efficiency improvements. However, federal priorities are in flux. We'll see a detailed breakdown on the next slide.
I wanted to note something real quick. The climate, the Prop 4 Urban Green Grants Guidelines went out on Friday, May 1st. I got a copy of it. Forgot to forward it to our general manager.
Yeah, and I think our grants team has already gotten those. And so whether they've had a discussion about it already, I'm not sure, but we're aware.
Okay, I'm going to submit to you 3 different proposals that I believe that the water district could file for service area.
Be happy to take a look at those.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this is my last slide for a little bit. This table summarizes the district's grant awards. So please note in the total column on the right, it's just whatever is highlighted in blue. So basically fiscal year 26 and 27 adopted budget numbers are not included in the total on the right. Instead, we include the estimated actuals for fiscal year 26 and the amended budget for fiscal year 27.
I wanted to note something else since you're working on the grants team, that the Urban Green Grant application is due like within 90 days, I believe. And the awards are going out in September. So it's a very tight window to operate in. Of the 3 ideas or proposals I have, one is a joint one on Quarry Lakes Park with East Bay Regional Park District. The other 2 are with the city of Fremont. So we need to hustle to get our applications in. 84 million or 85 million is going to be dispersed in September.
Thank you, Director Sethy. We will make sure to convey that to the team.
Okay, now, before we transition into the remaining section of the presentation, I want to briefly touch on the district's reserve position and overall financial trend. We don't have to go back to the slide number 33, but on slide number 33, the district's combined reserve have declined from approximately $230 million at the beginning of fiscal year 23-24 to approximately $160 million projected for fiscal year 26-27. This represents a reduction of approximately $53 million. And out of $53 million, $34 million represents the general fund, and $19 million reflects the planned use of facility improvement fund. And this continues to be the period where the district is strategically drawing down reserves to support critical infrastructure investment, water supply reliability initiatives, regulatory compliance requirement, and major capital improvement projects, while continuing to maintain strong financial metrics and AAA credit ratings.
I don't think we're on the same.
So
slide.
if you look at
We're on
that slide,
slide 44 and you're on 33.
oh, so yeah, I was talking about slide 33. If you look at the top on the fiscal year 24 actuals, you see the $135.36 million. That's the general fund. You add the FIF at the bottom of 77.577. That will get you the $213 million at the beginning of fiscal year 23-24. And at the very end, you'll see that 101.529 general fund ending balance, and you add the $58 million. That will be the $160 million projected for fiscal year 26-27. And we're spending down $53 million of the reserves.
Yeah, so we just went back to slide 33 so Mr. Cho can make his point. We will be revisiting similar data a little bit later in the presentation as well. All right, with that, I will ask Cassandra Cao, our acting senior financial analyst, to present the next section.
Just a brief comment on your slide. One of your slides said that we were investigating funding opportunities on the Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart program. I looked at this briefly. Water Smart has both funding for desalination as well as recycled water. I would hope that we keep our eyes open for desalination as well.
Absolutely.
It's not in our plan, but it would be good to include desal.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cassandra Cao. I'll be starting my presentation. So this slide outlines our total expense budgets for the operating and non-operating expenses. Fiscal year 26 estimated actuals are projected lower than the budget primarily due to lower capital project spending on projects such as the Averroes pipeline. Fiscal year 27 amended budget increase 1.2 million, 204 million to 205.2 million, driven mainly by higher capital projects and water treatment expenditures. Source of supply has three major sources of water: the San Francisco Water, Semi-Tropic, and State Water Project. Fiscal year 27 amended budget declined due to the paying SF water purchase earlier. SF are increasing 7.4% per year for the next 2 years. Transmissions and distributions for fiscal year 27 are higher. The reason for this is the estimated actuals for the year is based on actual staffing versus next fiscal year staffing is based on full staffing. Administrative and general includes other post-employee benefits and aggressive advanced pension funding payment ending July 2031. Expense projects are projected to be zero next year since it has been moved to the operating expenses. Capital projects will be discussed by the engineering team in further detail. Customer capital contributions has successfully, Customer capital contributions has successfully implemented electronic bill payments to customer accounts with the help of the customer service team. Overall, 47,000 customers are signed up for auto pay, 99% of the payments including the one-time payments. Debt service includes the 2025 refunding bonds. These numbers are based on the debt service schedule. A bar chart illustrates the total expenses for each category. This slide shows the snapshot of the available cash reserves, inflows and outflows. Fiscal year 26 actual balances projected higher than the adopted budget. 163.8 million actual versus 147 million budgeted. Cash balance remains higher. Fiscal year 27 amended budget continues the upward trend due to the less capital spending. This section provides an overview of the district's reserves and debt indicators. The general fund actuals for this year is higher than the adopted budget due to reduced capital spending. That's why the general fund balance is higher. Reserves are exceeding our established targets. Debt coverage ratio is well above 200%. Operations and maintenance, I will highlight three main categories: water, power, and chemical expenses, which fluctuate widely from year to year. We will discuss water and power and chemicals in later slides. Overall, the current fiscal year and next fiscal year amended budget remains flat. We are assuming the water average demand is 33.85 MGD. This chart shows the changes in the operations and maintenance expenses, as we just discussed. Administrative and general expenses include the district-wide benefits for employees. Administrative and general salaries include the district-wide positions such as finance, human resources, admin staffing, information technology, as well as other pay such as vacation and sick leave. Total expenditures increased from 60.2 million in fiscal year 26, estimated actuals to 62.8 million in fiscal year 27 amended budget. Cost drivers are primarily driven by advanced prepayments, salaries, employee benefits, and pension-related costs. Also, the cost of living adjustment. Estimated actuals for this year is based on actual staffing, and next year, fiscal year's budget is based on the full staffing. This chart shows the changes in administrative and general expenses that we just discussed. Expenditures is mainly driven by three key areas: source of supply, capital projects, operations, and maintenance. Labor is identified as pattern portions, while the solid portions is the remaining expenses. The pie chart shows the percentage breakdown of each cost center, and the total general fund for this year is 177.3 million. Labor is 35% of the total expenses. Next fiscal year, expenses are 194.6 million. Labor is 34% of the total expenses. This slide shows the overview of the labor expenses, including salaries, benefits, and related costs. Estimated actuals is based on actual staffing, while fiscal year 27 is based on full staffing with a modest 3% vacancy saving. Employees are summarized in the slide. Annual other post-employment benefit costs and pensions are aligned with the board's action to address unfunded liabilities. This improves the financial performance and expedites the repayments of those liabilities, unfunded liabilities. There's one proposed staffing change. It's to remove a vacant limited facilities operator. This position was created to help with the startup of the PFAS treatment system. This year, there are 20 vacancies and 2 retirements. Operations and maintenance purchase water. San Francisco water rates are increasing 7.4% per year over the next 2 years. We are assuming the average water to be at 33.85 MGD. As we just learned earlier from Mr. Coran, effective May 14, 2026, the state water increased the water supply allocation from 30% to 45%. If you notice, the bar chart looks like the water purchase are declining. This is because the estimated actuals for this year is higher than budgeted, since the San Francisco water is paid in June instead of July, and the same is done for the amended fiscal 27 budget. Operations and maintenance power. Power is based on water demands and PG&E rates. Pumping costs are strongly tied to water demands. Water demands are strongly influenced by weather. PG&E has been increasing rates every quarter since 2018. The district's average unit costs are down 10% compared to the last year due to our green energy program. Also, fuel costs has been down due to our fuel efficient vehicles. Operations and maintenance chemicals. Chemicals are used to treat raw water to drinking standards. Additional chemical expenditures were anticipated for fiscal year 25-26 due to coagulant testing at Water Treatment Plant 2. The U.S. government also announced a 10% tariff on imposed good effective April 2025. Water quality has been variable, but this year, the winter and spring seasons have been great. Fiscal year 27 amended budget remains flat compared to the adopted budget. The district participates in a regional consortium to ensure possible pricing for chemicals. So this is the debt service, which is from the debt service schedule. Debt service also shows the interim financing and the 2025 refunding revenue bonds for fiscal year 27. This concludes my portion of the presentations. Is there any questions?
In the board and members of the public.
Okay.
No one's
If
Good
not,
presentation.
oh, thank you. I'm going to hand this off to the engineering team, Director of Engineering, Grima Wolk, and Project Engineering Manager, Chris Delp.
I have a few comments that they're leading to questions. We're showing $140 million in water revenues. How many acre feet is that? And what would be the cost per acre foot?
Yeah.
Right.
I can't do the math in my head, but it's all based on 33.85 MGD.
305.
33.85 million gallons per day.
So aren't we around 38,000 acre feet, something like that? Is that about right?
It'd be a little over, I think they transferred almost equivalently, an MGD to an acre foot. So 33,000 acre feet for $140 million. So that math we can do. Next, I would hope that at some point we start getting into the water marketing business and we establish a line item budgeting for the ability to market water. I've done limited amounts of that in the past, so we'll see where it goes. I'd also like to see, again, it's almost a subset of how much number and dollar amount that we send to collection agencies, because that's really a write-off. Because we get some, maybe 20% at most, collected from the collection agencies. But since it's a measure of our water affordability. And also when we list the sources of supply, I think it'd be interesting to show the dollar per acre foot for each of the sources of supply. We showed the total dollar amount we spend on each of those sources of supply, but not how much each costs us. There's a wide range there. So it gives us an opportunity over time to maybe possibly make some adjustments. We could have some significant dollar amounts.
Just to add to that, if we had a history, maybe even going back as far as 20 years, take our, how much we sold in acre feet, divided into our water revenues, see what the trend line is overall. Then what Director Weed is asking for, maybe we could do more compressed in the last 10 years. But I've mentioned this before, when I go up to my cabin up at Pinecrest Lake, I can see 42,000 acre feet of water. I know how much water our community is using. So if let's just make up a number, it's 40,000 acre feet to $145 million. It's about $3,500 per acre foot for everything. So be interesting to go through that analysis. Please come back to the finance committee.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking of where we have all of this data, and I'm sure we can bring it to committee relatively soon.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable request. Sounds like you're interested in dollars per acre foot for each of the individual sources of supply. There's going to be a bunch of asterisks all over that because there's not all apples and oranges, but we can share the details. It's not a problem. We can do that in a near-term finance committee meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Good stuff.
And if I may, I want to respond to Director Weed about the question about the liens. So since May 2024 up until now, we have placed $361,000 on property, and we have received $66,000 so far.
Pick a part of that.
So for the collection that we put on the lien for the property tax, for the payment that are due, we placed $361,000 on lien since May 2024. That's 2 years ago. And ever since then, for 2 years, we have received $66,000
Yeah, but 350,000 is sent to the collection agency.
to the county to put it onto their
Is a
property roll.
write-off entirely, and then the money that comes back is not reflected in our budget. So it's about a $350,000 write-off. I submit that if we put it on the property tax statement, it would have been paid.
I'm talking about the property tax statement.
Yeah, I think we're talking about two different things. That's all. I think, yeah, Director Weed, I heard your suggestion as you're really referring to referrals to collection agencies. And Mr. Cho's kind of just providing some context related to our, when we send delinquent bills to the property tax rolls. So those are two different animals. And I think we can share more detail about each one. Totally understand your suggestion that we should be striving to minimize the number of dollars and customers, frankly, that we're sending to collections. That's what I understood.
Exactly, and hopefully with the proper billing mechanism and the referrals to delinquencies on the property tax bill is a way to do that.
Thank you. All right.
Well, if there are
Thank you.
if Mr. Stevenson, I apologize. So if there are no further questions on the general expenditure and revenue numbers, I will walk the board through the capital improvement program. I'll be tag teaming this presentation with Ms. Chris Delp. I will do a more formal introduction of him when it's time. With that, a quick overview of what we will be talking about this evening with respect to the capital improvement plan, capital improvement program. We'll walk you through the framework, key updates since the last budget adoption, highlights of the proposed mid-cycle CIP budget, some differentiation between extraordinary and expenses and capital projects, and then the near-term focus for this mid-cycle update. As a general note, this being a mid-cycle update, we try to minimize the changes to only what's necessary, so you won't see major changes other than the ones that were caused by maybe delayed projects or significant additions that were required by regulatory or operational needs. As far as the CIP framework is concerned, these are some of the documents that inform the CIP plan, the 25-year capital improvement plan. As you know, a couple of months ago, the Water Resources Master Plan was approved by the board. The board also approved the 5-year strategic plan. So these are the key foundational documents that inform the CIP. We also presented on the IT Master Plan, and the board gave its blessings to move forward with the projects in that plan. So these are some of the documents that make up the foundation for our 25-year CIP. Regarding the mid-cycle budget update and the 3-year total fiscal year 24-25 through fiscal year 2026-27, the total approved budget is $192 million. So the takeaway here is that the proposed mid-cycle update will stay within these numbers and within the financial planning model parameters. Looking back 10 years on the capital improvement program, the board is familiar with the investments you have approved and guided us through the past 10 years. Generally, we're on an upward trajectory as far as capital investments are concerned. We had a slight dip in the last fiscal year, but prior to that, we had one of the record high investments in capital projects. And this trend will, in fact, continue as we look at the 5-year, 10-year, and 25-year plans. Looking at the numbers, as the finance team indicated, we have 6 columns on this table. The first 2 columns are the actuals from the fiscal year ending in 2024 and ending in 2025. And then the adopted budget for the current fiscal year, the estimated actual for this fiscal year, as well as the next year's adopted budget versus amended budget. I draw your attention to the bottom line numbers for this fiscal year from $67.6 million. We're anticipating investments down to about $52 million. That's about a $50 million drop. As Ms. Cow and Mr. Martin Karan indicated, this is due to some projects that were delayed or faced some permitting or construction issues. So it doesn't mean those projects are canceled per se, but they've been delayed. So those investments are kind of pushed out to future fiscal years. Our strategy as staff has continued to focus on high priority projects. These are your mineral projects, infrastructure upgrades, and investments in our security and SCADA communication systems and seismic resiliency. We have kept targets and we continue to focus on those targets of meeting those objectives and strategic goals. We have sought and the board has approved certain strategies to improve our capital program implementation, which included adding change order authorizations or contingencies in our construction contracts and allowing staff to make decisions at the right level at the right time, which has significantly contributed to some of the improvements we've made over time. Another thing that we've been focusing on more recently is using partnerships with the cities or other agencies in order to enhance, especially on the mineral side, and we've seen some success, so we hope to capitalize on those strategies. For this mid-cycle update, I will tell you that we're not meeting our fiscal year ending 26 goal. As of March 2026, when we looked at the numbers, we're hitting about 50%. Again, this is due to some big ticket projects that have been delayed but are still in progress. So even though we're potentially missing that target, we're thinking that we will be investing in those dollars the following fiscal year and the year after that. As we continue to design and construct projects and bid projects, we're using those most up-to-date numbers that we get from contractors or our cost estimators, and those are reflected in the mid-cycle updates that we will share with you shortly here. We have also updated schedules for these projects to the extent that they've been either delayed or pushed out or accelerated. Those are reflected in the mid-cycle update. Here are program elements looking at the entire 25-year CIP. We have more than 270 projects in the program, over $1.74 billion. This is the adopted budget. In just the 2 years, fiscal year ending 26 and 27, we have more than nearly 100 projects, about $115 million. We did add 6 new projects. Staff, in different departments added 6 new projects because of operational needs or some strategies to accelerate projects or get projects funded through grants and things like that. Some of these projects include the Shin Pond fish screen, or the OGM trailer, a trailer that we were going to be using for interpretive public engagement activities. So projects like that have been added, but generally we've kept the mid-cycle update to be to the minimum. So that's one major takeaway from this update. As I believe Mr. Cho or Mr. Koran mentioned, the Water Resources Master Plan has projects and initiatives identified, and the board has actually approved those projects. Those will be incorporated in the next 2-year budget, and the board will have an opportunity to weigh in on those projects and the timing for those projects. I will pause here and see if there are any questions or comments. Okay. And here's a tabulated view of the changes broken out by 2-year, 10-year, and 25-year. The adopted budget from the last year has $131 million for the 2-year, this fiscal year and the following fiscal year. In this mid-cycle update, we're showing $115 million. That's about a 12% drop, and it's for the reasons that we described for the projects that were delayed or not implemented as we had anticipated. In the 10-year window, we're looking at about a 2% change. That's an increase of 2% in the total number of projects or dollars to be invested. And then the 25-year overall is showing a drop about 1%. So overall, we are staying within 1% of the 25-year, 1 to 2% of the 25-year budget. Some of the drivers for our capital improvement program, and the board has seen this before. Inflation and cost escalation is still a factor in our capital improvement projects. We are focused on, and we have several projects in construction, some of which are main renewal projects. We are also working on seismic improvements such as the Alvarado Niles pipeline project. The Dakota reservoir roof replacement is in final design and awaiting funding decisions, grant funding decision. Even though CPI continues to fluctuate, especially the construction cost index, which is perhaps a better measure of construction cost, has dipped at some point in the last 24 months. We are seeing, generally speaking, increased construction prices and bids and a challenging construction market in general.
When is the time horizon for Dakota Reservoir?
So we have designed and CEQA completed, I believe. Mr. Delp will correct me, but we have applied for a grant and we're hoping to be approved for that grant. And as you know, the federal government is in a limbo right now with respect to federal assistance and things like that. But I believe we have programmed the project to be bid within the next 2 years, 2 or 3 years.
Very much dependent on the grant strategy. Just full disclosure, our intention is to get the project ready, shovel ready, and then confirm we have grant award before we cannot start construction before you're awarded the grant. So it's a tremendous amount of money. So that's part of the strategy for the reservoir, just full disclosure.
Sir. So with that, I do want to turn it over to Mr. Chris Delp. And Chris Delp is not new to this board. He has made presentations before, but he has not made the CIP budget formal presentation. So I want to introduce him as well as share his background, professional background, if you would allow me. So Mr. Chris Delp was promoted to project engineering manager, and he assumed this position in late March of this year. So he's still kind of new to that position. So be nice to him. Given this is his formal presentation, yes, I do want to introduce him and share his background. Chris joined the ACWD team in March 2012, and he brings more than 30 years of professional engineering experience in both private consulting as well as public service. And for the past 10 years, he actually served as the project engineering supervisor, as you may know. And he has led a wide range of projects, some of which are very familiar to this board, including the Fish Passage projects, the seismic retrofit projects such as the Alameda Reservoir roof replacement and the Alvarado Niles Main Renewal project. His expertise includes the design and construction of public works infrastructure, utilizing a variety of project delivery methods, and managing a team of project managers implementing those projects. Chris holds a bachelor's and master's degrees in civil engineering from UC Davis and Stanford University, respectively, and is a licensed civil and structural engineer in California. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris to walk you through the remaining slides.
Thank you, Mr. Woke. You may have the clicker. All right, carrying on with our discussion of the 25-year CIP. I wanted to highlight a few things. You could see in keeping with what's already been discussed with this mid-cycle update, we're trying to make minimal changes, mainly reflecting projects in progress, whose schedules may be affected or that we have new bid information. You'll see, I did want to point out main renewals line item has dropped between the prior and the proposed. That actually reflects how projects are categorized. There's been no change to the main renewal program. No main renewal projects have been removed from the program, but certain projects are being categorized differently. Other than main renewal, you can see that there's very few changes with the other categories: seismic improvements, Fish Passage, AMI, and then the meter replacement and customer jobs. Taking another look at the 25-year horizon with a $1.72 billion value. The near-term focus, we're averaging $58 million per year over the next 3 years. And then moving on to kind of the 5-year intermediate term, we'll be averaging approximately $64 million per year. And then further out, the out years is $70 million per year. I do want to highlight one change that was made in this mid-cycle, and that's shown in a budget increase in fiscal year ending 31. That is the Shin Pond Fish Screens expansion. And that is the addition of more fish screens adjacent to the existing ones that were recently built on Alameda Creek. And that project will provide operational flexibility on the creek. It will help preserve our water rights. And by adding it to the budget now, I believe it makes it eligible for grant funding. And so that was the motivation for adding it at this time. Looking at the big picture, this slide shows the allocation of the 25-year CIP towards pillars of the district's strategic plan. 84% of this 25-year CIP supports pillar number 1, cost effectiveness and value. The strategic goal is to maintain and improve the cost effectiveness, reliability, and value of district services. Much of the CIP addresses reliability of the district's infrastructure. 9% of the 25-year CIP supports pillar number 2, water supply. The strategic goal is to sustain a reliable, high-quality water supply for our customers. And examples of the type of projects that support Pillar 1 include main renewals, seismic upgrades and retrofits, and maintenance and modernization efforts. Examples of those projects that support Pillar 2 include improvements related to facilities supporting our water supply reliability. And then looking at the 25-year CIP by program, You can see that approximately half of the CIP is allocated toward the main renewal program. 18% is allocated toward treatment and transmission projects. And 17% is related to or supporting other projects, which I'll break down further in a subsequent slide. Smaller categories include service line and meter upgrades at 4%, seismic upgrades at 4%, and customer funded work at 4%. Looking at the CIP in another way by funding source, you can see that 67% of the CIP is supported by the general fund, which has an impact on rates at 1.4. It's actually missing a zero. It should be that underneath general fund, that's actually 1.41 billion or $1,410 million.
Can I ask you to go back a slide?
Sure.
Slide 78. So, out of curiosity, what year would we be planning for a total AMI upgrade to our customer base?
I heard, what year would we be planning?
We were looking at a 20-year cycle.
This
So-
is about AMI, advanced metering infrastructure. The board understands that we've got basically a 20-year time period where we're relying on the existing system, but we're planning to then do additional replacements and upgrades after or around toward the end of that period. So the question is, when is that upgrade expected and in the CIP?
I can address that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at our spreadsheet and we're looking at fiscal year 44, 45. So about 20 years from now.
Because I thought the life.
Fiscal year 44, 45 is when we have programmed the dollars for replacement.
Another 19 years and we replace the, all of our meters, correct? Or nearly all.
Yes.
But we've had our meters in for a while now, and I thought we were working on the premise that it was a 20-year life cycle.
That is correct. So when we had budgeted this last year, I think we had just completed the full deployment of all the meters. So when we do the 2-year update next year, we will pull those years numbers back to fiscal year 40, 42 and 43. So those numbers will be updated, but it's in the 25-year plan as it stands.
Thank you.
And just a quick note about that. Those out year schedules are always going to be, there's a fair amount of uncertainty in terms of timing and magnitude. What we do is every single year we're looking at the CIP over and over. And so what we'll do is once we have not a lot of experience with these meters, we're learning more every day. As we move forward toward that 20-year end of the tunnel that we're aware of is coming, we'll be able to better develop and project the timing. And I think in reality, it's not going to be entirely a one time acute event. There'll be a ramp up, there'll be some work over time, and then they'll be closing out. That's my guess is the way it will play out. And the CIP will be updated to reflect that as we get closer.
Yes. Got it.
Let me make a note that comment I made at the time when I questioned the AMI program is that technology is moving very rapidly. Camstrup now makes a meter which has audio detection of leaks in both directions. And so we may want to consider introducing a different meter for new installations, given the new technology.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, that will be part of the project. We will do a study. Hopefully all of us will be here then, and we'll decide on what kind of study we will be conducting before we actually implement the meters.
If not, John's going to write it into his will.
Point taken.
Or recruit people to go to the Water Smart Summit.
Are there more questions on this slide? Okay, moving back to This slide again, what was being discussed was that 67% of the CIP is supported by the general fund, and 29% is funded by developer-related charges from the Facilities Improvement Fund, Facilities Renewal Fund,
Within 100 feet.
and the remaining 4% is comprised of customer jobs. I did want to pause for a moment to talk about capital projects versus extraordinary expense capital projects. This slide should be familiar to the board. It typically shows up in every budget presentation. This year, several projects that have been categorized as extraordinary expense in prior years are now being moved to the operating budget for accounting reasons. These projects tend to be projects that do not result in a capital asset or may result in a capital asset in the future, but tend to be studies, pilot programs, one-time projects in response to an emergency such as a flood, master plans. So projects that may have shown up in the CIP spreadsheet in the past of this nature have been moved out into the operating budget, but they do not affect the overall budget. I mentioned other capital. So the types of projects that make up other capital in that prior pie chart are tank and reservoir improvements at 52 million, booster and pump station improvements at 21 million, vehicle capital and associated improvements at 17 million, IT investments at 11 million, and then studies and investigations associated with the groundwater basin at $9 million. Looking now at the proposed 10-year CIP by program, shown in dark blue are the seismic improvement projects, which include reservoir seismic retrofits and seismic upgrades to water tanks. Main renewal continues to be a large focus, and that's shown in the teal color. And you can see that there are changing budgets year by year that reflect when large main renewal projects enter the construction phase, which is when the large dollars obviously are spent. And the remaining categories, which include SCADA and PLC projects, projects associated with treatment, service lines, and meters, and other capital tend to remain constant from year to year. Now focusing on the year 1 and year 2 projects, this slide shows those projects in year 1, which have a budget equal to or greater than $500,000. These projects tend to be and they are continuing to be the main renewal projects, and they include the now completed Dairy and A Street project, the Lindsay Tract and Birch Street, and Central Newark Thornton projects, which construction has been completed and we're in the process of closing out the projects, and the Crestwood, Fremont, and Alvarado Niles pipeline projects, which are in the construction phase or soon to enter the construction phase. Other large projects include vehicle capital expenditures and service line replacements. Moving on to year 2, again, the larger projects tend to be the in-progress main renewal projects such as Alvarado Niles or Crestwood Fremont. Also shown here is an upcoming main renewal project that's being it's a joint project with the City of Newark as part of their Old Town Streetscape Improvement Project. And then there's other projects on here that are related to the groundwater, such as the Cedar Arp Wells project, the groundwater basin data gap analysis project, and then the brackish groundwater project. So this concludes our discussion of the CIP. Are there questions for me or Mr. Awoke at this time?
Questions from the board? I will checking if we have any members of the public.
No members of the public.
I'm back.
Thank you, Mr. Delp. So as part of the financial planning process, the board reviews the assumptions that are in the financial planning model and its metrics which illustrate the district's financial health. So we'll be comparing, you'll see the metrics will be comparing the adopted budget from last year compared to the amended budget. So on the screen now are the changes and assumptions since budget adoption. Water demands are updated and aligned with water resources projections. And SFPUC, the rate increases, we've mentioned already, 7.4% each year for the next 2 years, but they're actually increasing their rates 27% over the next 5 years. So that's also built into the financial planning model. The PAYGO General Fund CIP has increased by $15.5 million from fiscal year 26 to fiscal year end 31. And to reiterate, the financial planning model does include $20 million each year in interim financing for the CIP starting next year, fiscal 27. And the current plan assumes $100 million in interim financing during that period of time. And again, the rate increase assumption in the financial planning model, we're assuming 5% for fiscal year 27, 5% for fiscal year 28, and then 4% ongoing from fiscal year 29 on out. So with the current plan, the projected ending balance for the general fund is projected to be $15.8 million below the reserve target at the end of the planning horizon. You'll see that on the next slide here. So the financial planning model metric shows the projected ending balance for the general fund over the planning horizon, so fiscal year 24 through fiscal year 31. The top chart shows the projected ending balance at budget adoption, with the low year being $1.6 million below the reserve target. The bottom chart now shows the amended budget, the proposed amended budget, and it shows the general fund ending balance low year at $15.8 million below the reserve target. We will address this during the upcoming rates sessions. Our current focus now is on the mid-cycle budget. So this metric shows the projected bill demands. Bill demands reflect reductions in the updated demand projections, with planned water purchases reflecting lower bill demands. The long-term new normal water demand is a slight increase, 33.94 million gallons per day. Right? We were assuming 33.85. It's going slightly higher, 33.94. But this year it's trending lower, exactly 33. Next up are debt coverage ratios. And this chart shows that they're well above the 200% target set by the board. We have strong debt coverage, and this is one of the factors that rating agencies look at in grading the district's credit rating. This next chart shows a comparison between operating revenues versus operating expenses, and we can see there are funding gaps. Operating revenues are the red line and the operating expenses are the blue bars. So this means the district relies on non-operating revenues, including property taxes and interest income, in order to cover operating expenses. And the next metric compares rate and charge revenues to the revenue requirement. The revenue requirement is primarily the district's operations and maintenance costs. Again, this shows that the district relies on other funding sources to meet its revenue requirement and fund general fund capital projects. So above now is the planned CIP through fiscal year 31 by funding source. PAYGO, so general fund cash, is the green portion of the bars. The facilities improvement fund is the purple portion. Facilities renewal fund is the orange portion, which is very small up there. And then debt financing and proposed debt financing is in pink. So on average, the annual PAYGO general fund funding is more than debt financing. And just reiterating, the general fund CIP portion has increased $15.5 million over this time frame, averaging approximately $35.6 million per year. So I'll pause here to see if you have any additional questions.
No, it's all good information.
Thank you very much. So with that, I will turn it back over to Mr. Cho to discuss next steps. Thank you.
So directors, before concluding tonight's workshop, staff would like to recap the next steps and request any final budget guidance. So far, there were no requests to change or modify the proposed budget. Staff will follow up on requests for additional information from the board, including but not limited to more grants. What is the actual units of water that we are purchasing identified by source? What is the amount that was sent to the collections? And for AMI that was completed in fiscal year 23-24, when is the next replacement cycle? And again, based on tonight's discussion, there were no requests for modification into the final proposed budget. And unless requested and see the need to have the follow-up budget workshop session, the final proposed amended budget and capital improvement program are scheduled to return to the board for adoption at the June regular board meeting. At this time, staff is available for any additional questions or directions from the board.
Does this mean we're saving on a meeting next week?
Yes,
Great.
and the one after, yeah.
Is any other questions or comments from the board? And perfect. I think does that conclude?
Yes, that concludes the presentation. I'm handing it over to Mr. Stevenson.
Yeah, so thanks, Mr. Cho, and thank you, staff. Rapid fire, tremendous amounts of information, really, that puts a bow on months and months and months of work in this in this budget process. So we appreciate you guys taking in a lot of information really quickly and for keeping an eye on this process. So yeah, and thank you, Mr. Cho, for recapping what you heard. It matches what I heard. So yes, that would mean that we would not need the sort of as needed board meeting that's currently on the calendar for next week. So we would cancel that meeting. And then the next time we would see you on this topic would be at the regular board meeting in June, when we ask the board to consider adoption of the budget, as it'll be pretty much precisely what you saw. So with that, I think that's all that we have on this item, and that's all that we have on the agenda for this evening.
I'll just say thank you to staff. I think it's a good sign when we don't have too many questions on the budget, because we're well apprised on what to expect. And I just want to thank all the staff for giving us a lot of information in a short amount of time, packed in quite a bit tonight.
Is the optional meeting for June 25th, could that be used as a starting point for talking about rates and?
Well, we are planning on going ahead and using the June 23rd meeting, 25th meeting to go ahead and start talking about rates.
Mr. Stevenson,
Yeah.
currently we are scheduled for July, and that's actually earlier than previous sessions.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Thank you, Mr. Cho. You are correct. We had another if needed. So we are planning on using the July 30 if needed. And I will say, staff is still working on doing some preparatory work related to rates. So we wouldn't be in a position to really share much in June. Thank you, Mr. Cho. I was a month ahead.
I want to thank everybody, just like President Akbari did. It's absolutely wonderful work, good teamwork. And you can tell that there's hundreds hours, thousands of hours of thought has gone into all this. So
Indeed.
it's really appreciated. Even if we don't have anybody here from the public, we are the public here represented. And it's greatly appreciated. This is what makes the district really run well.
And thank you. I did do some back of the envelope calculations. Appears as I recall, we've had 33 and a half MGD per day for the last several years is a fairly baseline anticipated water sales. And at $120 million, that comes out to be a little over $3,000 an acre foot. When it's $140 million in revenue, we're up to $3,700 an acre foot. So we're getting up there.
I'd like to commend the staff and also the board on the main renewal program. The number's pretty large, and I think, I don't know, I'm speculating, but I would not be surprised that there's multiple agencies and cities out there that don't have that number. And it's an easy number not to have because you just change, you chase leaks, you chase failure, and we're not doing that. So thank you.
And for me, just thank you. Great job. I know it's a lot of work, and thank you for predicting and answer the board members' questions ahead. The presentation in details actually have taken into account of all our past comments and asks and requests. So thank you.
Great. Well, that concludes item 4.2. And with that, at 7:01 p.m., we will adjourn tonight's meeting.